Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Wednesday, July 24th. We're starting a little late, mostly because what happened is yesterday I spent the entire day struggling with incredibly hot temperatures and grocery shopping, and so I fell asleep early, slept for like 4 hours, woke up at like 10 in the morning, then fell asleep again, and apparently slept for another 12 hours, so certainly not in the best of sorts. We have new Tavern Brawls. We need 3 major Shaman victories and 3 Druid or Rogue victories, and Battlecry cards will almost handle itself. Let's see what the Tavern Brawl is. Now, with any luck, this will be the first Tavern Brawl that is not built around one of the single solo expansions where you have to play a whole run of games. And we can see that the run that existed before, I'm pretty sure, just got canceled, because if I did have a run, almost certainly it would have still been going. Let's see, we need to win 1 victory for this card pack. Let's see, Ragnaros is looking for strongest deck. Take control of a random deck. If you lose, you get a copy of your opponent's deck. How long can your deck survive this burn down? So seriously, it seems like this is just a case of random cards. And I guess I don't get to pick who I'm going to play as, so we have 4 chances out of 9 heroes. I did get a little bit of scheduling done, so I did do a little bit of work, but this past week and the beginnings of this week so far, it's been pretty laid back as far as
I must protect the wild.
As far as getting things done, which is I did all of the Halloween month, and that is now the big annual event. So it really is just a matter now of starting to make some footage, probably not too much footage, for Zero. Build a deck, please. Interesting. There's a card here that showed up just called Build a Deck, Please. And it played apparently automatically. Interesting. This is something that the deck tracker is seeing, but we didn't see anything like that.
I see a vision.
This one is called Strength Within 358. This one is called Swarm 359. So it's like they're just doing some random sampling here, in the form of a Tavern Brawl. Alright, well, since we started late, somewhat late, I don't know if I'm ever gonna stream any earlier. That is something I am thinking about, but probably won't change, is as I move the pre-recorded footage down to earlier times, these streams will still be at like 4 or 3 p.m. earliest, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which might work well, might not work well at all. It kind of just, it depends a lot on how things go. The other thing is, while I am gonna start breaking up again videos, just once we're done with the America's account, I'm just gonna break up the video then, and that might mean that some videos are super short and some videos are super long. It's something that needs to happen. Choose one. Summon 2/3/2 raptors. There we go.
Tortola, preserve us!
Let's see. Yeah, pretty much before we hop into the news, the only other thing I did is I finally finished watching Recreators on Amazon Prime, which is an anime that started off strong, but then there's a very specific point where one of the characters leaves the series. I'm trying not to spoil too much. And when that character leaves the series, I kind of quickly lost interest in it, because it kind of lost momentum for me there. And inherently, while it is an anime about regular Japan having anime and manga characters come to regular Japan and meet their creators, it really is just an excuse to put a bunch of characters together and fight with a very loose story that's not really explained until about episode 22 of 26 episodes. So the rest of the series is built around the idea of just showing fights. Unfortunately, the problem with that is you have so many different styles of anime characters that you'll have a mecha fight that doesn't have enough time to be an interesting mecha fight. You'll have a sword fighting anime characters that don't have enough time to be animated enough to be interesting as a sword fighting characters. You'll have magic fights that don't have time to be interesting, and they're fighting against each other. It is the kind of concept you would imagine that a little boy playing with his G.I. Joes would do, where he would go get Superman and G.I. Joe and have them fight, and then you have to give the G.I. Joes some excuse as to why they're not getting destroyed by Superman, if you want to have any logic to it at all. And inherently it's not going to make any sense anyways. So that's a problem. And then it would be also even more accurate after you have the little boy fighting Superman versus G.I. Joes for him to also bring in a Transformer, for him also to bring in the Hot Wheels and say that the Hot Wheels cars can fight somehow. It's just not laying down a basis or foundation of a logical set of rules, that because each character has their own set of rules that they are living by. So inherently that destroys the momentum of the series throughout the entirety of it, and there's a sharp turn in the last 4 or 5 episodes towards the dramatic, when you really hadn't had enough time to build up any of the characters, because like the last movie I talked about that had way too many characters, there's just way too many characters in it, and they're not given any time to be developed. I also recently finished watching 6 Feet Under. I don't know why anybody ever liked that show. I recall it winning Emmys, and maybe this is just a case of the fact that it was on the fact that it was on HBO opened it up to have enough funding behind it to lobby to get Emmys, and that might have been just the case.
Well played.
But yeah, I did not like any of the characters in 6 Feet Under, and it continuously expanded to add more characters that were still unlikable, and it had no real consistent theme or plot. In a weird way, it's almost like it's the opposite of Dead Like Me. Because the usual first scene in 6 Feet Under is them showing you a person or a couple of people and maybe making you guess how they're gonna die, and then instead of killing them in a funny, silly way to add some levity to the story, killing them in a tragic, dark way to just make this story more tragic and dark. But those first scenes were clearly done by a B team in 6 Feet Under and had no real connection to the main story and the main character elements. So, yeah, I'm surprised it went 5 seasons. It's kind of weird what gets 5 seasons and what doesn't. 5 seasons being roughly 100 episodes, which at least used to be the minimum for syndication. Now, ask yourself this question. For a show like 6 Feet Under, that was an HBO show, and every now and then would throw in nudity and sex, and would throw in quite a lot of drug use in almost every episode because of one character. It gets kind of ridiculous to think 6 Feet Over would ever air in syndication, and it really hasn't. If anything, it's getting rerun on HBO, and HBO is doing something different now, where they've taken the quality judgment. As I understand it, the company that owns HBO, which is like Starz or Showtime or something like that, or something like that. The company that owns HBO owns a bunch of other lesser quality channels, and they're going to make a new streaming service or a new channel called HBO Max. And so now you're going to have a lot of these bad quality things labeled as HBO. So HBO no longer even stands for quality, or at least pretends like it stands for quality, which was kind of the one thing it had going for itself. So that's a weird situation, certainly in TV. The Orville Season 3 is kind of effectively canceled and not airing on Fox's broadcast channel because it's now moving to Hulu. So if you want to watch Orville Season 3, you have to go to Hulu. I think I'm just kind of fine saying, alright, I'm done watching the Orville TV series. It got 2 seasons in my mind, and it failed to kind of continue expanding out in its universe. There really is only about 6 main aliens, and they were kind of always telling very similar stories, particularly in the conflict episodes, where you're actually fighting people. It's pretty much the same stories over and over again. I think there probably was just also a matter of them going too fast in Orville. But I guess since it is getting a season 3 on Hulu, it probably will go 5 seasons or long enough to get syndication too. But I don't expect that Orville season 2 really Rikered the cast or anything like that, where they started getting really good in Star Trek: The Next Generation in season 2. Furthermore, there is people now that are going to be There are going to be people that that will jump over from Orville to the Picard CBS series and give that a try. So, whereas nobody was really liking Discovery, if the Picard series actually manages to be good, that might be interesting. Now, ironically, the Picard series is also being accused of plagiarization after Star Trek Discovery. It was accused of plagiarizing a video game, and I don't recall if that lawsuit ever wrapped up or not. So this very well may be an instance where whoever is in charge of CBS at the moment is just allowing people to steal ideas left and right. So what's happening with Fox as far as why they're getting rid of Orville season 3 and moving it to Hulu is Disney bought basically all the existing properties, as I understand it. So the only thing they didn't buy was the actual broadcast channel of Fox. So every Fox, and I assume that includes 20th Century Fox movies, product now is a Disney product, which leaves just the TV stations, just the local stations that are running the news, and whatever Fox as a broadcasting station is going to start airing from its own creation at this point. So it kind of feels like the entire channel has to start all over again. And that's not as bad for Fox as it might be for other things, because Fox cancels things like crazy. I do know that they're bringing an American version of Lego Masters to their channel, and there's certainly a decent number of other things that they could probably cancel and make new shows around. The things like Family Guy and The Simpsons, I imagine, are going to be sticking around, even if it is a different experience.
Whispers everywhere. Welcome to the exhibit.
Right.
Tortola, preserve us!
Let's go ahead and attack here. Attack them. Inherently, because Disney owns all the things in production, or it seems like at least that's how this acquisition is gone. That means a lot of things that were on Fox could go to ABC, or more possibly to Disney's streaming service. So we could see ABC change a lot. We'll potentially see
Who's next?
potentially see there we go, finally. Took a couple tries. That's not a lot of work. I don't see any reason to keep playing though. That seems like that would just be a waste of time to keep playing the Tavern Brawl. Unless there's some kind of reward that you get. Sometimes these rewards don't get labeled as, oh yeah, if you did this a lot, you would get rewarded. I guess what I'm gonna do is just play Mage. We'll just go with a custom Mage move and see if that works, and hopefully that doesn't cause us to lose. only NBC and CBS, I guess, are not directly affected by Disney's acquisition, whereas the rest of the world is. Which gets us to the video game part of this story. Yes, there actually is a video game part of this rambling. A investor who I assume owns stock and potentially is attempting to attempting to influence stock value, has made the suggestion that Activision's poor performance has left it open specifically for acquisition by Disney or Apple. Now, I could kind of see Apple, but Disney has specifically come out and said it's been bad at video games. I don't know why they would want to acquire a failing Activision and think that they would have the skill and ability to turn that around. That seems just silly, quite frankly. Yeah, and then Apple does have its Apple Games service, which is going for more of a Apple TV, Apple Arcade lineup. It's really not being built around the concept of a AAA developer and publisher, so they could fill in maybe a little bit of a gap there if they acquired Activision. But what you really would have to evaluate, what is Activision now? What is Activision going to be by the time you acquire it? We have, like, Blizzard everybody has left the ship on Blizzard. I think everybody that mattered probably left the ship as far as let's see. Let's see if we can do this. Yeah, I feel like Activision really hasn't made a relevant game in probably a decade, and Blizzard, I know closer that the state of Blizzard is in terrible shape. They did announce a new character for Overwatch. Okay, fine. Like they're still chugging along, but not really much more you can say there than that. It's somewhat plausible, and inherently I have to reiterate that I don't like that Disney has been allowed to become this huge monopoly and megaopoly. It shouldn't have been allowed to acquire Pixar, shouldn't have been allowed to acquire LucasArts, Lucasfilms. It shouldn't have been allowed to do a lot of things. You see an immediate instance here of the fact that as they acquired Pixar, as they acquired these other companies, they really failed to they've really failed to let's see.
Return to nothing.
Disney has really failed. Sorry, I got distracted there. They really failed to maintain or continue what Disney was about. Like, I hear Disney World, the Florida one, Is that Disneyland? I think that's Disney World, is the Florida one. I hear their latest like Star Wars expansion is a huge ripoff and not that good. We can certainly see that there's been a lack of improvement or new creation as far as the Disney animated series. Instead, we've got
Return to nothing.
we've got the new Lion King, which is just a remake without the animation, and I think it adds a Beyonce song and Beyonce the characters in it, but that's about it. And I come to a realization, in particular on the Lion King, I don't think I've ever watched the Lion King past Hakuna Matata, and I think I'm perfectly happy with that. Yeah, so just like my recommendation on the Watch the Lion King, I suppose, is watch the Hakuna Matata song, and that's it. Just fast forward up to that, watch that song, and that's it. You probably could watch that part on YouTube easier, but yeah, I don't think I've ever watched the entire movie at all.
Arena's full. Beat it.
So yeah, that's a weird thing. It makes sense though too. I don't think I've watched any of the Disney movies all the way through, and if you think about it, I bet most kids, if they don't have a long attention span or a long preschool in which they put the entire movie in front of you and you actually sit and watch it, I think most people most young kids would get up and walk away for parts of it. I definitely wasn't much of a movie fan in my youth, and frankly I think that's probably for the better, because if you are a music fan, not a music fan, a movie fan in your youth, you're probably taking the bad lessons and the bad movies that you would see as a kid and thinking those are actually good.
That's not a valid target.
This one has rush. Alright, well fine. I'll do that. You get 3 health. Is there anything else to ramble about? Well, we have the new Twitter feed, which is total garbage and everybody hates it. I instantly tried to install 2 Chrome extensions, plugins, to change Twitter back to its view. However, because of the way Twitter is changing things so rapidly, these plugins did not work at all. So I'm hoping that they'll get updated. It is hideous, to say the least. Maybe I could get used to it. I mean, I could get used to a lot of things, and I think my experience visually with it is better than most people's experience, because it really is just so zoomed in on me so that I can read the text on my small secondary monitor. I guess I don't want to do that then, because I want to lose again. So let's try Shaman. Shaman will be Murlocs, and then that would be quicker experience. Really, if I could just get rid of the navigation bar being on the left, Twitter would look about the same.
Morgul versus Anduin.
But it still kind of sucks. And definitely I looked in the regular options of Twitter just to say, hey, is there a way to go back to the old way? And of course there's no way to go back to the old way. I don't want to say that all UI artists should be tied to a desert ground and covered in honey and let ants sting them to death, but something similar to that should be a threat that is available before they decide to change the user interface of any service. It's like the thing about user interfaces is you do your best you can when you launch, and then you can really never change it much at all. You can make a tiny tweak here. If the audience is demanding some change, you can make that change and make the audience happy, but it has to be almost 100% demand. Like if 50% want it changed, you have to leave it the way it is, or you at least leave it as an option. But once people learn how a website or a service or a program looks, you really just cannot change it. And UI people never get that. I assume breaks down to they have to justify their existence some way, and for a position to exist. But there's never been an instance in my mind where a website has changed its interface or its appearance, and I've been super happy about it, or liked it in any way whatsoever. That being said, I would be willing for a slight change to the Steam storefront. If they got away from the blue color theme and just went to a white color theme, I'd be fine with that. But I wouldn't want any of the buttons or layout to really change too much. I'd still want things to be where they are, even if things look slightly different. This is inherently why everybody hates every new version of Windows. Also, is because Windows changes the way things look and the way things work for not a good enough reason to make people have to relearn where things are and how settings work and such. If I wanted a completely different operating system, I'd just go to Linux, a completely different Linux. And even like Ubuntu drastically changed the way it looked, and that lost my attention on that as far as Linux versions. Moving on, we have a Kimetsu article here. Home Sweet Home Episode 2 launches for PC in 2019. This is the follow-up to a 2017 released horror game. I think I've heard of Home Sweet Home, but I'm not sure what it is. Looks like it's a Japanese horror game, and inherently any of these horror games, or Asian style horror games, inherently the problem with this is you will see that there's not like a great difference between a low effort asset flip horror game and a actually we put some effort into it horror game. So what I should do is come over here and play first. Let's back here. This, and that. Then in the turn. What I'm gonna do is open up for Home Sweet Home, which is a Molly Crew song also. So maybe we'll find, maybe I have to scroll down. Yeah, the Steam link is about the 6th down. Right. So we're over here on Home Sweet Home. We can see that this game is on my wishlist. I actually did log in to to finally see what that adult game was, and it was just a low effort anime slide puzzle game. This is tagged partial nudity too. See, you can see maybe just ever so slightly more effort was put into putting details on the walls and items around in places, but frankly, an asset flip horror game looks very, very similar to this. Trailers like this look very, very similar. They clearly are taking games like this as their model. The only thing I would say is that the fact that you actually see a character walking around, and it is a slight bit of helpfulness. Sometimes you'll see in these horror games that they won't even show a character. You can see this is mostly positive though, and it's already on my wish list. So Home Sweet Home 2, I guess. Let's see, there isn't a Steam listing for it yet, but yeah. I don't know how many horror games I really am gonna play though. So I probably should have played some of these Battlecry cards actually. So yeah, I'll put it on the follow list. Although there is, I guess, an argument that I need to have in my head about should I have sequels to games that I'm not 100% certain about on the wish list or not, because I probably have been bitten in the butt at least once by buying the sequel to a game and then having to buy the original, or wanting to buy the original before I actually play it. So that is something that probably means I should put the game in the follow list, but then the follow list doesn't really make sense, and this really boils down to it would be nice to make a different list if I had a list just called sequels, which I could make that after I bought the game through the library. I could tag it as something called sequels needs original, which I am fairly certain I did make that tag at some point. But that's only after you buy the game. That doesn't help in purchasing decisions. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article here. Black Sad release date has been pushed back a week to early November. Black Sad is, I think, a point-and-click adventure style game where you're playing as a cat. Let's see. It's an original story set in the unique world of this French comic. It's actually called Black Sad Under the Skin. I don't know if there's anything else really to get from that though, because the thing here is that I've never heard of this comic. It's probably a French comic. It's probably a French noir detective story, and you really shouldn't get very hyped on something like this, because even when you had something like LA Noir, there was a level of overhype on that game as kind of a noir game, and then the game itself was kind of generic outside of the story elements. The open world stuff that most people did very little of, or really didn't want to do at all. So, yeah, and Black Sad being based on a French comic gets strike one for that. Being a furry animal type character gets a strike against it for that, and being unheard of to most people, it gets a third strike by that. So when this game comes out, it might be great, but it's at best going to be a hidden gem. It's not gonna blow the world up with everybody loving it, or well, journalists might love it, but real people won't really want to play something like that. It'll just be too weird. Also, it's got a strike against itself because of the Cats trailer and everybody hating that. And inherently, Cats was always a weird musical in the first place. It feels like it was always a joke. Some of the songs are good, but the story is not that good, and the stage play on it is really requires you to suspend disbelief. So taking that to the general public in the form of a movie was a ridiculous idea. It would have been better staying on Broadway. Gamatsu has an article here. Shadow Quarter for the Switch launches August 8th in Japan. Seems like we're slowly going to start seeing this year's release of around Halloween horror games. This game, Shadow Quarter, has a Steam page already, so we can look at it. It looks a little simplistic, quite frankly. This.
Remember the sun well.
There we go. So here we have the game Shadow Quarter. It again looks like an asset flip horror game, but it was rated very positively and it is already on my wish list, so this was one I evaluated. I am beginning to get a little concerned that the standards have been lowered by so much in horror games that this game is very positive. That being said, I guess there's not much I can do about it. I suppose there is a level of admittance here that I'm probably just not the target audience for horror games because I'm not scared by them. And so that changes my experience on them. I think something that is a horror-based game that's a first-person shooter like Fear probably interests me a lot more, or a horror-based game that's a platformer like Alice Madness Returns or American McGee's Alice. I don't mind horrific elements. I'm perfectly happy for games that have horrific elements, but I don't get anything from actually trying to be scared by them. So I need to see good gameplay, a good story, and most horror games are just avoiding an enemy that's invincible, which is pretty dull. Hide and seek games are not something that would interest me. Oh, speaking of games that won't interest me, I saw Giant Bomb do coverage of Fantasy Strike, the supposedly for new players to fighting game that came out for the Switch. And I saw some gameplay of it. Every hit does basically the same amount of damage in Fantasy Strike, except for a special attack and a super attack and maybe one counter, and that is kind of it. There are entire mechanics that have been removed and the game plays incredibly slow. Now that they looked at it from a perspective of what they've heard is the number one complaint with people new to fighting games is they don't ever get to play because somebody will fight them online and lock them into a combo and defeat them on the first attack, which is not a good environment for learning, certainly. However, making the game incredibly slow doesn't really solve that problem either. So you're put in this weird position that darn it. We'll play that right. You're put in this weird position where if you played Fantasy Strike and you liked it, you really still haven't learned anything to play a regular fighting game. You're still moving incredibly slowly. So I don't think that that's really a solution, and for that reason I'm going to try and remember to remove it from the follow list. It's been in early access on Steam for a long time, but seeing the level of quality that it is in its current form, I know where it's going, and where it's going is not something that is really worth me bothering with. Which is fine, because then that just removes it from the list of the about 10 fighting games I might want to cover over the next 5 to 10 years. The Fantasy Strike can be off that list, and there's other games that arguably are better introductories to fighting games. When you compare something like Fantasy Strike to something like Smash Brothers, I think a lot more people are going to play Smash Brothers and at least get some general basic concepts covered in something like Smash Brothers. Where Smash Brothers is a very zoomed out multi-character fighting button mashing style game, it's still closer than I think Fantasy Strike is. Meanwhile, I think possibly Mortal Kombat might be a good introductory things, or maybe you don't need an introductory fighting game and you just jump into the deep end with something like Blaze Blue or Tekken or something else.
Job's done.
There we go. Moving on, we have a Gematsu article. Anodyne 2 Return to Dust launches in August. A Zelda-like adventure set in a lo-fi 3D 2D world. I don't like the idea of the phrase lo-fi being used in descripting anything, as lo-fi to me inherently means low fidelity audio, and I think what it's being used here is to say it's a low polygon count visuals. I don't right now see why this would be called a Zelda-like. Seems like there are different environments, and then you can turn into a car, and there's a city environment. But what I'm not really seeing, and then it seems like it changes its art style completely. What I'm not really seeing here is something that looks like that. Honestly, when I look at this, it looks like it's kind of a garbage game. I don't see anything here that it feels like it's a concept that hasn't been polished or thought all the way through. Hey. So in comparison, here's Anodyne 1 on Steam, and it is just 8-bit pixel stuff from what I can tell. And that's fine. If you just want to make a Game Boy Zelda-like game, that makes sense. But once they start throwing in the 3D elements and focusing it on that in Anodyne 2, I think they've lost their plot, and they've bit off way more than they can chew. You can see Anodyne 1 is very positive, but I wouldn't be surprised if reviews for Anodyne 2 are terrible. Alright. Let's do this. And that.
Remember the sun.
Actually, I could have just won right then. So, in a funny way, we've now run into a couple of games that are sequels that I'm like, maybe, but maybe not. I'm not expecting a lot from a lot of sequels these days, which is probably the right way and the right attitude to take. By the way, I can already see the end of the road as far as tabs. We still are not getting a ton of news. So this is a good point to break up this recording. We're done with the Americas account, and as I said earlier, I'm gonna get back to start breaking up videos. So in a funny way, we've barely gone, let's see, 52 minutes, but whatever. That's it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.
I can tell you'll have some new stories tonight.
Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Wednesday, July 24th. We are on the Asian account. Let's see, I guess if I reroll this, I would potentially reroll it into a 60 or higher, but I don't think I really want to do that. I think, although also you have the problem of no overlap here. We don't need to do the Tavern Brawl for the European account because we'll save that for Friday, and then the Asian account will do save for Monday, and it's just one victory anyways. So all I really need to do is play. So Druid, Hunter, Warlock. Let's start with Warlock and just play ranked. And what might happen here is we might get through the daily quests so quickly in this instance that we have to merge the European and Asian accounts. But maybe not, because there is also a level of just having shorter episodes. I'm starting to run out of episodes as I'm scheduling Hearthstone, because I've been releasing it every day to kind of burn its lead. I think I'm gonna have to go back to just releasing it on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. No, not that. Monday through Friday would be how Hearthstone episodes air. Pre-recorded Hearthstone episodes. I stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Instead of right now, the pre-recorded Hearthstone episodes are every day, which still pre-recorded videos, not really getting any real views. Although I will say that I've been pleasantly surprised this past week with a increase in people actually commenting. Keep up with the comments. I love comments on my videos. It gives me little bits of feedback that at least one person saw the video, and it does feel like if one person comments, then somehow my videos get suggested more, and then I start getting more comments. I am in the opposite position as most content creators, where I really don't hate the comments, and I'm in no way overrun by the comments. Like, I'm getting 1 or 2 a week, which gives me plenty of time to respond to them at my convenience. So, yeah. That's nice. I have seen, for content creators, no less than 3 of the standard channels that I don't believe, or I definitely wouldn't have believed up until this point, were owned by some production company. But at least 3 channels have come out in the past week or 2 and said, we hate the comments, we're disabling the comments. And while that is pretty normal on YouTube for the content creators to say we hate the comments, we've disabled the comments, things like that, it's not so normal that it happens in a row like this. So I'm wondering if there is some production companies that are, like, once again secretly running YouTube channels as if they are independent small YouTube channels, when really any successful YouTube channel on YouTube is almost guaranteed to not be an actual independent small YouTube channel. So yeah, it might just be a coincidence. I know YouTube kind of have changed the comments a little bit, but nothing terrible that I've seen. It still seems to be pretty much all the same old. Honestly, my channel's so small and such of a unseen mesh. If there was one person that just loved to hate my channel and just put something not terribly offensive, but something like the exact phrase "you suck" on every single video that came out, I probably would be like, thanks for the comment, man. It's like there's I'm more desperate for interaction than I am for positive feedback. And like, I've personally had a life where I've learned pretty well to ignore people that are going to say negative things anyways, and just be like, I don't care about people's opinions enough for that to be something that would affect me. Now, on the other hand, if somebody commented and they were actively saying really nasty things that like bad words that might demonetize my videos or something, I'd have to block them just for the protection of my videos. But a general "you suck" is fine by me. Or, you know, if somebody actively wants to make the arguments that, hey, you could do it better if you do it this way, there's probably a lot of truth to that, if I can do things differently, which is a big if, or want to do things differerly. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. Trine 3, the Artifacts of Power for Switch launches July 29th. Was it Trine 3 or was it Trine 2 that was the bad game? Let's see. And it seems like this is actually some kind of standalone spin-off of Trine 3, because they're also selling the Trine Series 1 through 3 retail collection. Let's see. Trine 3 artifacts powers included in the fall due Trine Ultimate Collection for the PlayStation, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. So it would be kind of silly to buy the separate game when you know that there's a couple more games coming out. There's a collection coming out that's better. Let's do this. Let's see. Destroy all friendly minions for each one. Sacrifice 4 minions you have in your deck. Destroy a minion, costs 1 less for each minion you control. There we go. Think I might be alright here. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Miyamoto remembers the late Nintendo president Satoru Iwata in a new book. I am not aware that Shigeru Miyamoto has written books before, but it also kind of makes a weird position because it tells me Miyamoto has not been actively or extremely active in the development of Nintendo games or Mario games in particular. This is a book, let's see, that is in Japanese, so the odds of it getting translated to English are not amazingly high. But I guess that's where it just kind of stands. Yeah, I don't mind people that are retired writing books or authors that are employed writing books, but it does speak something to what is his level of involvement in making Mario games. Now, in all fairness, it's possible that Miyamoto has not made anything or been heavily influential in any of the Mario games since maybe Mario 64 even, or even maybe Super Mario Bros. 3, because Nintendo somewhat likes to give their newer employees chances to make their own games. So he could just have an office and give the general idea of this is how Mario would act, and he gives overall approval, but he does definitely feel like he is at a point where he is a manager that is not doing a lot. Let's see. This. And then 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 another turn. There is also, I guess, an element here where yeah, Miyamoto is also the Zelda creator, so he probably hasn't been influential in Zelda in particular for a while. When you look at like Breath of the Wild, but Satoru Iwata was pretty much just a manager. I think he made golf and programmed that, but that's kind of it. Golf for the NES and Famicom. So this is, while a loving tribute for a friend and boss, it's probably not going to have a lot of juicy details. I don't, I guess I could be wrong, but I doubt we're going to find a revelation that Iwata was running a company like Atari, where it was run by a bunch of hippies, and then there was all kinds of conflicts and interesting stories to tell inside of that. As far as the video game industry really goes, there hasn't been a ton of crazy stories since that first generation of Atari, and it's been pretty clean and pretty corporate, and like most other industries, you don't hear a ton of large amounts of corporate intrigue. You'll get something like the Pirates of Silicon Valley movie talking about the beginning of Apple, but if you tried to make a sequel to that telling the last 10-20 years of Apple, it would be rather boring. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article, Fantasy Strike Review Bare Bones Brawler. So this is the game I saw the review on Giant Bomb. So this has, I believe, 8 characters in it, and none of these images want to load. Let me see if I can reload the page and see if that will work. I don't see a reason why images on TechRaptor shouldn't load.
Job's done.
Nope, they are not loading. Alright, so if we scroll down to the end here, we just want a generic review. So TechRaptor gave it a 5.0 average, which basically means the game is garbage, because almost no game gets below a 7.5. Fantasy Strike delivers on its promise to make a fighting game easy to pick up and play. It's simple to get the hang of, and the characters usually actually have cool abilities. Still, it's lacking in content, lacking in a player base, and plagued with AI issues. Pros, unique character abilities, decent soundtrack, easy to pick up and play. Cons, unsustainable single-player offerings, terrible voice acting, overly bland visuals, and little to no online population. And this is after months of particularly being on Steam and open early access. So I'm getting confirmation from 2 review sites that it's not the game for me. What I saw when I looked at the game told me it wasn't the game for me. So yeah, that will be removed from the follow list. This is one of those rare instances where the game is big enough that people will review it, and then I'll get some feedback, whereas 99.5% of every other game on the follow list is something that is such a unknown quantity that nobody will ever review it other than just regular players who purchase the game on Steam's storefront reviews. TechRaptor has another article here. Supercell Games taken down in Vietnam, citing local regulatory issues. Clash Royale, particularly, introduced its Royal Pass, and it felt extremely greedy at that point, and money hungry and pay to win. What the reason for this doesn't seem to be fully explained, but I can't say I'm very sympathetic to to them. And frankly, even though I am still probably a year away from having everything upgraded to the highest level on Clash Royale, the way the game has changed makes it a lot easier to ignore it. Previously, you every 24 hours had to play 3 to 4 games to get all the chests to unlock it. Now you can kind of just play as many games as you want to unlock as many chests as you want. But there is a bit of a element to that that also makes it so that you can just also leave the game alone and not have to play it as often on a daily instance, which is kind of fine because that's what I wanted to have happen. But then it is also balanced by the Royal Pass, which is a monthly pass. And I'm in a stupid position, certainly, because I'm playing Destiny Child, and Destiny Child has like 5 to 10 monthly pay-to-win Destiny purchases that you can do, and I'm not doing any of them, but I'm playing a much more greedy game. On the other hand, Destiny Child plays itself for the most part, so I'm not having to click the buttons, and I don't lose anywhere as often as I do in Clash Royale. I almost never lose in Destiny Child, because it's a game where you're mostly playing against AI, and it is close to 96-97% win ratio once you get about mid-game. I did realize one strategy. It is never valuable, I think, to level up your low star count character skills, which means if you have a 3-star or a 2-star or 1-star character, even if you've leveled up those characters to be a 3, 4, 5, or even 6-star character, it's never worth the currency onyx to increase those skills, because a evolved 6-star version that started as a 3-star, 1-star, or 2-star is still going to be particularly weak and not your main focus. You should mostly focus on 4s and 5 stars, so that you have a nice base of characters, and you kind of need a lot of characters when there is a world boss. I guess I'm halfway through playing Warlock cards and I'm getting victories, so I don't see any reason to change what I'm doing. Let's see. There was something Bethesda tweeted out that I wanted to mention. Oh yeah.
Gul'dan versus Uther.
Wolfenstein Youngblood is coming out
Your soul shall be mine.
pretty soon here. And I really don't have much to say about Youngblood that I haven't said before. I think it's ridiculous to try and take BJ Blazkowicz out as the main character and set the Wolfenstein series in this future world. Having these weird outfits was a weird change to the story that I don't think needed to be added to it, and continuing that way. But the main thing that occurred to me is you have Wolfenstein The Old Blood is the side story that happened after the Wolfenstein reboot. That's where you go back in the past and you're fighting zombies, and it's probably not canonical. Then you have Wolfenstein 2, and then the next side game is Wolfenstein The New Order, I believe, is the next side story. Or is that just the name of Wolfenstein 2. Yeah, I think Wolfenstein 2 is called The New Order. So what they've done is, it seems like they've ridiculously held fast and true to a naming convention for no reason. The side game was called The Old Blood. The next side game was called Young Blood, which would be the equivalent of saying New Blood. The whole naming series and the way they're releasing games is ridiculous. And they're kind of flooding the market, which is not a great idea. Is there a better way you could have done this? I'm pretty sure there's also a VR game, a Wolfenstein VR game, but I have no idea what that's called. Like, I'm trying to think about it. I'm trying to think, is there a different way you could have done things with Wolfenstein? Knowing that this is supposed to be a remake of Wolfenstein 3D, I think in the same way that the remake of Doom has to follow Doom Guy, and you can have interesting side characters trying to make that story better, but it still has to be Doom Guy and Doom, Master Chief and Halo, and BJ Blazkowicz and Wolfenstein. It just has to. It's so. The only thing I could think of is you drop the Wolfenstein name and you have a spin-off otherwise. And the reason that they're not doing that is clearly they're trying to get people to buy a bunch of Wolfenstein first-person shooter games that are in World War II without having a standard World War II game. Which it would be smarter, I think, if they just said, you know what, let's make a World War II game where there is no magic and there's no nothing there that would get in our way or interfere with telling a somewhat standard World War II experience. Because, yeah, Wolfenstein was always the Mecha Hitler element to the craziness in the boss. So just tell a interesting World War II story and compete against Call of Duty and the other games in that field. This guy is killing me. This guy is totally killing me. Should I just play this? Or just make, you know, Youngblood, since you've got the weird outfits, why not just make a space first-person shooter? And say it is in the same universe. It seems like what they're doing is they're trying to have a universe in the same way that technically or theoretically Fallout and Fallout and Starlink and the Elder Scrolls series are theoretically supposed to all be in the same universe, just thousands of years apart. You could kind of have that same story happen with the Wolfenstein universe, but you wouldn't want to just set it a generation ahead. The generation ahead thing tries to make it feel like that the name Blazkowicz is just going to be the last name of all heroes, and then you get into something like a Castlevania style game where every game it's a new hero fighting Alucard with the last name. I forgot the last name of those characters. Belmonts. Yeah, the Belmonts are what they're called.
I'll get right on it.
But yeah, they've locked themselves into a weird naming convention, and if the side game before was the Old Blood and the side game now is Young Blood, the next side game, if they make a next side game, would have to be called the Present Blood, or the Presence of Blood, maybe, or Current Blood, or something like that. It's going to be rather ridiculous.
What is my purpose?
Moving on, TechCrafter has an article, turn-based strategy JRPG RPG Tears of Avia hits PC and Xbox One this year. Let's see, it doesn't look particularly detailed from this screenshot. Looks a little bit like a Diablo-esque game. Let's see what the trailer tells us. Flying ship, then it's to pencil sketch, and then the rest of the cutscene seems to be pencil sketches. Anime girl are getting attacked by some kind of magical attacks and flying mechs. Interesting. Oh yeah, I think we saw this game already. This is the anime girls with the not afraid to have some cleavage showing game, which I guess describes a lot of anime games. It's really going to come down to popularity. I think particularly in the RPG and JRPG series, there is a matter of just if a game is popular or not. Because if it becomes popular, I'll play it or put it on the wish list. If it's something nobody would touch with a 10-foot pole, then it's something I probably wouldn't bother to play.
Job done.
This is gonna be terrible because he's just gonna attack that and kill it. But whatever. Let's draw 3 cards and see which one we can play. Play this. Gemetsu has an article. Atelier Ryza introduces 3 new characters: linkage synthesis and gathering point synthesis. This must be a new Atelier game because I don't recall ever seeing a name called Atelier Ryza Ever Darkness. These Atelier games seem to be coming out fast and furious though. It says, yeah, Atelier Ryza Ever Darkness and the Secret Hideout will launch for the PS4 and Switch on September 26th in Japan, and the PlayStation 4, Switch, and PC via Steam October 29th in North America and November 1st in Europe. Now, there is something I think to be said. This looks like a new Atelier character too, if I was to guess. There is something to be said, I think, about the Japanese acceptance of PC versions and Japanese versions of PC versions of games on Steam. It seems like a lot of Japanese developers and publishers are becoming a lot more willing to put it on Steam, but they're only really putting the English version on Steam. Which is not really what I would have wanted to see. I would have wanted to see a rise of PC gaming in Japan. PCs these days, even if they are going to be powerhouses, can be, I think, small enough to fit in a Japanese person's house. So that there is something to that. Previously, a full computer case was just too big, but you can make a mini ITX game gaming PC relatively easy, or at least something that's smaller than a full tower ATX computer case. There we go. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article. The Australian studio Defiant Development is ceasing development of new titles. The Defiant Development Company is the people behind Hand of Fate 2, and they're effectively shutting down after 9 years. What's funny here is I guess they weren't the studio behind Hand of Fate 1, so if you take nothing else from this, if we get no more information, it's not unbelievable that their last hope was to take a contract job to make Hand of Fate 2 and make enough money to continue the development of their own solo projects, if they even have any solo projects in there. And it seems like they did have 2 solo projects in development. Now, I don't think I've ever heard of a story where this has actually worked, but there have been some cases where companies work on their solo projects and do take contract jobs. It's just, if you're hoping to survive on that income alone and you have no investment capital, otherwise you're probably doomed. And inherently all game companies need ridiculous amounts of investment capital. It would be interesting if there was a Gordon Ramsay style of person that would do like a Hell's Kitchen to video game development companies and say, hey, let's slim this down, let's get rid of the salad bars, let's get rid of the extra expenses and be a tight, effective company and make money and make profit and ensure people keep their jobs instead of just giving them a good time and then laying them off after a couple of years. Although in this case, shutting down after 9 years is probably better than most. Writing on their Facebook, the company explained its struggle to keep up with the changing shape of the gaming industry and suggests its risky approach to development has finally caught up with it. Although the studio will continue to support its current roster of titles in caretaker mode, as in it's not going to really continue to support them. It has ceased development on all new projects, such as a working project called A World in My Attic, which maybe I've heard of, and the staff are looking for new positions elsewhere. The Defiant model has always been focused on creating a game nobody else would, which probably is a bad idea. Games that reflected the skills and passions of our team, which could be anything, and probably a bad idea. Games that try to do something new. It's nice to try to do that, but you have to be an established, stable company first. Our process has always been focused on iteration and exploration. So that sounds a lot like the Valve development model, and you've seen how often Valve releases a new game. Now when I play Magnet Card, it doesn't actually trigger that guy. Interesting. So if you magnetize, you lose out on Knife Juggler. Let's go ahead and draw a card. The quote goes, that is a risky way to make games, and we knew that. When it succeeded, it delivers things you could have never considered possible. Inherently, this comment, though, there's more to it. It says when it fails, it leaves you without a safety net. Inherently, this quote that's, I don't believe, actually closed at the end of this sentence, and then they start another quote. Yeah, there's a typo in this article. Defiant Games as a company I've never heard of, and I can't name anything that they've made. I would not have been able to even tell you they made Hand of Fate 2. So there's definitely a failure in their concept. They didn't make anything like that. This might also be in part due to the fact that it's in Australia. I would not try to have a video game company in Australia as long as Australia has a semi-hate for video games and a semi-love for censorship in general. So if I was even going to begin to try and have something like that in Australia, I would start by having a ESRB style lobbyist group lobby for a decade and get a lot more politicians on the side of the video game industry than exists and on the side of free speech. Speaking of free speech, the European Union is once again trying to pass some ridiculous hate speech laws, which any hate speech laws is a direct attack on free speech, and it's just hurting European citizens more than anything else, giving countries a monopoly on what they can claim as the truth and what isn't. And we've seen way more instances of politicians in Europe claim something is slander or hate speech or something like that to stop the press from pointing out that they did something unethical than we've seen of any kind of other issues. I could talk about the bad guys from World War II here. Like, the bad guys from World War II certainly made laws censoring some forms of speech, and now it's gone full circle, and people are trying to censor people who idolize the bad guys from World War II. Whereas the best way, in my opinion, to ensure that a totalitarian government does not come into power is to have free speech and even let idiots that idolize the bad guys from World War II. I'm trying not to get demonetized here, even though I'm not monetized anyways. Would be to protect free speech. So I guess Britain is getting out just in time, I guess. But who knows? That's a much bigger issue. See, the one thing I would like to see, and I'm gonna do some research on my own here. Defiant Development's website. Let's see. What games did they make? Apparently they made Hand of Fate 1 too, also. Our games. It says Defiant has developed a range of games from mobile, PC, augmented reality. You might know us from Sin Safari, or Ski Safari on iOS and Android. Heroes Call, Hand of Fate 1 and 2. So that's pretty much all their they're even willing to mention as far as their games. So there's like 2 mobile games, and that's it. Now, I would also argue that the Hand of Fate series very quickly put out a sequel without really changing too much or improving on the programming that they had in the fight sequences, which was a big problem in Hand of Fate 1. And while there was reason to like Hand of Fate 1, and I saw a lot of people play it a lot more than they really should have, in my opinion, my experience was, alright, let's get through the main story and be done with it. They really limited themselves in Hand of Fate 1, and they really didn't iterate, I don't think, in Hand of Fate 2. I'll probably buy that and just make sure I have all the DLC. One could also make the educated guess that things like Slay the Spire very quickly stole a lot of the ideas and concepts of Hand of Fate and did it in a slightly different way. Darkest Dungeon, while being a slightly different game, isn't that different. Or even Reigns as a series isn't really that different. Here we go. So it'll be somewhat interesting to play Hand of Fate 2 and go, well, this company finished their thing. That's all you can really say, is that I don't know how I played Divine Shield minions, but whatever. They did Hand of Fate 1 and Hand of Fate 2. I don't think Hand of Fate 2 probably is gonna hang on a cliffhanger or anything like that. Both games did something slightly interesting, and arguably maybe they should have been mobile games, or have mobile ports at least. Maybe Hand of Fate does work on like an iPad.
Your soul shall be mine.
But I don't think they really did anything that interesting or that new or innovative. Combining a tabletop game, which is basically all it is, with random encounters, and then adding a RPG gameplay fight sequences in generic arena sections wasn't really that new or intelligent. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Nintendo is hit by a class action suit over Switch Joy-Con drifting issues. I've also seen that the training material for service people is to offer to freely fix Joy-Con drift. So I haven't seen any stories out where somebody complained about their Joy-Cons drifting and then them being charged to have it fixed, or told that they won't fix it. So it kind of seems like this lawsuit probably would be thrown out of court, as the remedy that the court could offer, which would be money, is already being superseded by the fact that they're offering to repair and replace it for free.
Job done.
So, yeah. Drift in controllers is a thing that's always been a danger. So, maybe this is just a new generation realizing it, but I've got plenty of controllers. I got plenty of Xbox 360 controllers I don't use anymore that that have some decent drift, or the buttons have gone mushy, or something along that line.
Die, mage.
I comply.
Just keep on playing. Next we have a game on Steam here called Champions. It looks like it's an RPG Maker game. Yep, I don't see anything of interest here. Early access for $4.99, no discount, English only. Though, of course, not making it to the follow list. See, destroy a friendly minion. Alright. What can we do now? Let's just end the turn there. Gamatsu has an article over here. THQ Nordic has announced its Gamescom 2019 lineup. 4 new titles to be announced. I assume this is not the 4 titles then, because these have all been announced. Biomutant, Darksiders, Genesis, Desperados 3, and Destroy All Humans. Now inherently, let's see. Yeah, these are just other games that will be on the floor, on top of SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. And then a game that will be announced at Gamescom. So is it 4 new titles, or is it just 1 new title? It's hard to really have any faith in THQ Nordic though. And if we were gonna suspect that if the real suspicion this is just a collection of things. If we were gonna suspect any company would acquire Activision, it would make so much more sense that EA or THQ Nordic or a company like that would acquire Activision. It makes so much more sense. Let's see.
Nothing.
Alright. Go ahead and hit this, I guess. We'll just take out this character. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. Lost Wing announced for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Which looks like this is a space shooter game, although it seems to be at an odd angle. Can we see some actual gameplay? There. A shoot 'em up from a back over third-person perspective. Interesting. There might be something here to this style of gameplay that doesn't allow it to become just a huge bullet hell mess. The fact that the ship is bigger, the fact that there's just less screen and more time to see what's coming towards you. This still feels like this might be a game that would really hurt my fingers with the arthritis in them because of how fast-paced it is. But I'm a little bit more interested in this game than any other shoot 'em ups I've seen up so far. Most shoot 'em ups, I'm really just like, yeah, there's no chance whatsoever I'd ever want to play them.
Almost out of time. Free of that blasted tower. Behold.
Next we have an article on Gamatsu. Let's see, Boku Hime project announced for PS4 and Switch. A cross-dressing themed game, finally a reality. Boku meaning boy in Japanese, bokwa, meaning the male of I, and then hime, I think, meaning girl. So I think this is boy-girl project. If I've translated that right, maybe I haven't. Alright, it's for the PS4 and Switch, which makes the question about, is this going to be just a joke game, or is this going to be a heavily censored game on the PS4? Let's see. Decided that the game would not be made until it concerns over whether there was any demand for a cross-dressing game or quailed. The company. It started up in 2017. It's taken them 2 years to decide that they actually want to put it out as a final product. Yeah, and I could totally see that. It's not like cross-dressing is a fully accepted and understood thing in Japan. Wow, I just killed myself. Oops. And I certainly have to ask a question there too. Is I could get a dress-up game, and even that is an extremely small niche. Like Love Nikki was a fashion dress-up game, and then allowing male characters to dress however they want in any gendered clothing could be an option there. But specifically focusing on cross-dressing as a game, I don't understand what the gameplay mechanic is there. On the other hand, we do have games like Dream Daddy Dad Dating Simulator that came out and was at least well received by the press, and that is a visual novel game just built around dating dads in particular. So I think the world is wide enough and weird enough for at least one kind of game to exist. Try it once. It probably won't sell very well. Yeah, the Japanese people probably don't see a big difference between being homosexual and being a cross-dresser. So, and they're not generally particularly too kind on to accepting or inviting to people who are either. So, yeah. On the other hand, if you look at Nutaku, which is the company that's owned by Pornhub, the parent company owns both Nutaku and Pornhub, their gay section for adult games only started about a year ago, and it's still considerably smaller than their straight section. So we're all just evolving, I suppose. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Humble Hooked on Multiplayer bundle is now live for Killing Floor. This is just Humble Bundle, so we'll talk about that at the end of the stream. I don't know why I would have opened that link even. This is an interesting story. I think we probably are going to have to exit and load back in. Let's see. So while that's launching, TechRaptor has another article. Shovel Knight Dungeon Duels Kickstarter has been canceled and it relaunches in August. This, I believe, is a tabletop game based on Shovel Knight. Now, this is not something I think you're allowed to do. It's certainly not something I think that Kickstarter and other crowdfunding companies should encourage or allow. The idea of, oh, my Kickstarter is not going to be fully funded, therefore I'm going to cancel it, which I guess refunds all the money on Kickstarter. Sometimes some services the money gets transferred immediately, some services the money gets traveled once it's funded.
Your soul shall be mine.
So I think Kickstarter refunds all the money, or particularly in this case, they better refund all the money. But this is not what you want on your Kickstarter style service. Is a bunch of campaigns that fail to succeed, and then people coming back a second time, a third time, a fourth time, a fifth time. So yeah, that's something to keep in the back of your mind. Although, how much does a Shovel Knight tabletop game have to do with the Shovel Knight video games that are already out? I would just say, from that level of disinterest in your tabletop game, you might be a little cautious to expect a new Shovel Knight game to come out very soon on PC or any consoles, which I think was probably fine. Like, I did buy Shovel Knight, I'm pretty sure, so when I get around to playing that, I'll probably have my fill of it. I feel like Shovel Knight probably is a good game, but it might be a little overhyped game too. I seem to have a tendency to either fall into the hype of games when they are brand new, or completely reject games because they're even slightly overhyped when they're brand new, and then never get around to playing them. TechRaptor has an article here. Medium Molecule will hire a small team to create Dreams content. So that game that's not a game, but instead is a weird game creation engine. They are going to actually pay people to make content for their game because they didn't make content for their game. Their thing that's not really a game, I guess. It feels like this is a lot like LEGO Worlds, and it probably, if I was to guess, Dreams will end up a lot like LEGO Worlds also, where they were constantly either having to curate or add content themselves because all they had made is a foundation to create something in LEGO Worlds instead of actually making something. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article here. Compile Heart RPG Dragon Star Varner is delayed on PC until October. Surprise, surprise, a Japanese game is delayed. Specifically being delayed on PC tells me, yeah, people still don't know how to program for PC. Publisher Idea Factory said it was for better optimization. Yeah, we're still in the early first generation of games that are from Japanese developers and companies. And this looks like a JRPG, yeah. Again, how popular something like this is would severely affect how much I want to play it. Idea Factory in particular is maybe not the best JRPG developer out there.
So many possibilities as you command.
Yep, I definitely have to be careful about overcommitting on JRPGs or RPGs in general. Let's see. Also, I guess price would be affected. Although the problem with price in RPGs is I might get a cheap $15 RPG and it still might take hours upon hours to beat, and if it does take 100 hours to beat a JRPG, then that's a bit of a problem. That's a double oops. Next we have a game on Steam that's just a small amount of kanji. So it's a free-to-play adventure indie casual game. It says, to me it looks like it is a very small, probably low-effort visual novel game. It seems like it might have only 5 scenes in it. English not supported, Japanese only. Yep. This might just be an advertisement for something else, but even at that, it's not very well polished. This is not what you usually see even in a short and small visual novel. You don't see this pixelated small graphics. Well, that definitely is not making it to the follow list. Don't think I'm gonna win here, but I think I'll be fine. And oddly, we haven't been burning through the news, so we are in a good position to end this recording here and then move over to the Asian account. Yep. So, as always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box, and if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.